We are recording, dude.
All right. Well, sorry. We're professional or relevant what it is. So this is a recording in lieu of a failed live stream purely because it's been a little bit since we've done anything because of travel and technical issues, which are still hitting us today, even though we're available now. So NBA season's upon us. It's happening. It's real. We're about 5 to 6 games in per team, and some things have already occurred, as evident in I guess the thumbnail title. If you're actually watching this, you'll figure it out. But first thing we're going to chat about is the James Harden trade because it didn't take long into the season for this to finally occur. James Harden does get his wish, heads to the Clippers, third team in 3 tries of saying, I want to go here, and that's how it goes. And in return for James Harden, they get there's Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, and KJ Martin, and some draft picks. Most of those players very minimal contracts and or expiring. And the Clippers, we didn't mention this in the live stream, but we can list them now. PJ Tucker also follows James Harden over. So the Clippers really bolstered in their age. Really, that's all I can think of. One of the things we talked about before is it feels like Philly still has a move to do, very akin to that Drew Holiday Dame trade. That those are pieces that might go out and get something else. I can't see all of those players staying in the rotation, nor can I see Philly being content with Maxey, Embiid, and Harris. And then from the Clippers front, I think both of us are lukewarm on it. Neither of us feel like this is a finals contention move. It's definitely a regular season insurance thing, but I don't want to hog all of the talking points. So, what do you want to add about Harden?
Well, I guess that's the tough part about doing a second take on things, right? It's like, do you really want to repeat anything you just said like 15 minutes ago, right? So I actually brought up the standings. Okay, Philly are 4-1 at the moment, and
Hmm.
you sort of said there's another, maybe another move down the track here where maybe some of these other pieces go somewhere else. But do they really need that? See, here's the thing, Embiid has been a dominant force for several seasons now. He's coming off his first MVP. Um, him alone should propel the 76ers to the playoffs. Okay, I think he's that talented. Okay, and Maxi obviously is a young kid that now really gets the hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully a full season to actually just run the show. Let's see what the kid can do. All right, we know he can score 20 points a game. All right, we know he can sort of, get 6.6 assists, if not more, with the minutes. And he's always had to sort of share minutes at the one, whether it was, Harden or whoever else was there, sort of situation. So the 76ers, I think, would probably be better off really just riding it out. And if they continue to be in top four in the East, which they're currently sitting fairly comfortably there, I don't think another move is necessarily needed.
I think I think the issue is obviously you're putting a lot of stock in Maxi growing. I think it's the playoffs though. We kind of know after a couple of years of seeing this over and over again, Joel Embiid's going to be beaten up and hurt by the second round, and so who else is able to assist to take a little bit of that load off and propel them forward? And Maxi may be the person to do that, but I believe Maxi, if I've got his age right, is only 22 or 23, and it's a pretty big role to put on him. Tobias Harris, we kind of know is Tobias Harris. Just as a sidebar, I feel like he's the guy. Like he's got this massive contract. He just goes out and hoops, and he clearly dodges a lot of conversation because his contract at one point was like one of the highest paid players in the league, and he never really performed like it. So he just gets to go out and chuck up a couple of shots and grab some rebounds and throw out some assists, and he has a great time. But I mean, Philly's got to look at the league currently and basically say that the Bucks, if they, I don't know if they're better, post the Dame trade. The Celtics look like a juggernaut, but can their health hold? Because I always have the reservation with Kristaps, and I think Kristaps is unlocking a lot for them. And Miami currently is cellar dwelling, and they always treat the regular season like this. But Philly has to look at this as a legitimate shot to get to the finals. It does feel like the East is in a better position to do that. And if you've got 4 players sitting on the bench that are going to be off your team at the end of the season because of their contract stipulation, and you do nothing with that, we're talking like I don't know about you, but like Chicago comes to mind instantly, right? Surely someone at Chicago is going to get blown up, and they'll be on the trade market, and that's how Philly can swoop in with something like that. Utah, I don't know what Utah is going to do as the season progresses. I think they caught a lot of people by surprise, and now they've got assets and they might choose to do something. But, those are just two quick examples where, Philly has to strike, because otherwise, if they just let the clock run out, the whole James Harden trade turns into a 2028 draft pick, really.
But I guess you mentioned the Jazz and you mentioned the Bulls. Who would the 76ers want from those teams right now? There's no one that really makes any real sense to give up um, assets to swing a sort of a blockbuster deal that sort of puts them over the top. There's no one there that moves the needle in that sort of way that doesn't jeopardize the chemistry they already have. The only difference here effectively is that they've taken Harden out, promoted Maxi to be leading guard, and then they've got all these vets they just got to incorporate into the rotations. That's not too far fetched. That's not huge challenge.
I think we can understand it from both sides. I can be the pro, you need to make a move. You can be pro, wait it out. I think we've seen this Philly thing time and time again. It doesn't really matter who's on the roster. By the time that the second round ends, Philly will not be progressing. Like, that's just historically been what it's been. And I don't know why we would think that an extra maxi year and Embiid being a year older and will eventually accumulate an additional injury on top of his injury history, like, this is the year that they all figure it out. I just don't know why I would think that.
I guess clearly you've got no love here for just player progression, right? And team
Nope.
chemistry. They're not that old. You're sort of siding like, oh my God, they're a year older. They're not like the Lakers in a sense. They're not like the Clippers in the sense, which is obviously the other side of this trade where they're players that are obviously mid 30s now, nearly in that sense that yeah, look man, I think if the Sixers continue to stay top four, I think they should just ride the course out. That's how I see it. All right, but hey, if they freak out, they want to make a trade, that's probably not that far fetched. But I don't think that's going to serve them any real positive purpose.
Well, instead of talking about Philly, how much do you want to rehash Clippers? Because basically, this is what we summarized. How are those four going to work together? This is clearly regular season insurance, knowing that Kawhi and Paul George will take some time off from time to time. And we kind of know that there's some playoff shortcomings with everyone individually there. So maybe when there's four of them, at least one of them has a good game and propels them to a win.
Well, I think it's more so that can these four guys stop the other team? Isn't that it? And I sort of alluded to that before that they're gonna try. Yeah, I think that's the part, right? And they still got Quiet, and they still got PG. PG, not that many years ago was really sort of thought as a all defensive player. And he's got good size at his position. And look, I don't know. I think I alluded before that it's. I think they definitely had a chance if they're all healthy come playoffs time. You sort of said, well, anyone in the playoff school has a chance. Well, that's technically correct, but I guess that their resume and their credentials probably give them that little bit of a you just sort of feel that there's some little bit of experience there that, hey, and we're talking about maybe like the first round, second round, that they're players here that, and obviously Kawhi's got his ring, and players here that have gone deep in playoff runs before that, could really sort of just get that W when it's a close game in that sort of sense. And yeah, look, man, look, end of the day, I think it's like they got to stay healthy. They make playoffs. They avoid the play-in. All right, that would be probably nice for them too. All right, and hey, look, they're probably not a team that people want to play necessarily in the first round, and that's it, isn't it?
No, look, you're not wrong. I think if you looked at last season, Westbrook pretty much single-handedly gave the Phoenix Suns a bit of a problem, and Kawhi obviously won them that one game as well. And that is that's kind of what I was alluding to with anyone has a chance when you're in the playoffs. So, maybe they get a good string of luck. Maybe that's dictated based off them having a really good regular season. And maybe that's what the logic here is. But I guess moving on, talking about what the current seedings look like. Denver sits at the top of the West and has looked pretty ridiculous, carrying on that continuity from the finals team and not really making a lot of changes. And the new look Celtics being a very formidable offense. I don't know if you've seen, they had that 155-point outing against Indiana. But their offensive rating right now is, is it sustainable across an 82 game season? Maybe, maybe not. But right now, like, they're record setting. So those two teams currently seem like the favorites, and everybody else is still figuring it out. A lot of teams made a lot of moves, or a lot of teams have, come back after some injuries, and no one really looks as dominant as those two respective teams. So, I said it before, but is it too early to chuck those two teams straight into the finals, or at minimum the conference finals?
Well, here's some more stats, right? When you don't have to freak out about live streams and try and track 5 things that are going on at the same time, you can actually just focus a little more on the topic, right? And here's more stats. Boston are 5-0 at the moment. Obviously, huge, obviously offensive rating, like you mentioned, and they have beat New York, Miami, Washington, Indiana, and Brooklyn. Now let's think about those names for a second, right? There's probably no one there besides, you could say Miami, but Miami are like, look, that's a whole nother topic right now. How slowly again they're coming out of the gates at the start of the season. But the 4 other teams there, they're games that Boston should have won. These are teams that play in teams at best. You could say the Knicks are, maybe top 6 contenders in the East. Um, Look, I think it's still way too early here to sort of make all this noise about the Celtics. We know they're going to be top 4 in the East, yeah, barring some crazy sort of injury to Tatum or Brown or something like that along those lines, yeah. That they're going to finish top 4 in the East, but to suggest that they're going to go all the way, yeah, man, I don't know if I jump on that bandwagon yet. I think the Bucks still have plenty to figure out, and like we talked about, Sixers are there, continue to be dangerous, and yeah, it's just the East at the moment, or all teams at the moment, are still real up in the air, I think.
Yeah, well, I was looking through the standings, and excluding the top 4 in the West, everyone else has a losing record. Obviously, early days, but the West is clearly quite competitive, and a lot of people figure that excluding maybe the Spurs, Trailblazers, and Rockets, that everyone else is going to be in that playoff contention. Obviously, Memphis currently is ailing without Ja and Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, etc. So maybe they're a team that just naturally slots out as well. But it's going to be an interesting season. I do just feel very similar to last season, where Denver really was the clear favorite from December, but we created these narratives and created these hypotheticals saying, oh, like if this team gets it together, or I think that they're a legitimate chance, and it ended up just being them. And I think the way that Denver plays, I think the style of play, the personnel that they have, I wouldn't be shocked if it's a very similar scenario, that they're top of the West in December, and we're looking at them basically just as good, if not better than last year, thinking they'll probably just do it again, right?
Well, I think we picked. I don't know. I can't even remember. Do you remember who we picked in the come out of the West? Um, I don't know if we picked Denver or we picked the Warriors. They're probably the two that sort of jump out in my mind. Which clearly both teams at the moment are coming off to hot starts, which is putting them right there. I think to really be up there in the West. Yeah, look, I think right now it's still way too early, but Denver are going to be up there. We already knew this, right? And yeah, I think the bigger shock here is the Mavs, right? The bigger shock here is the Mavs 5-1 at the moment. Bit of irony that Kyrie comes back and then they lose that game, right? The game he comes back after missing 2 or 3 games from injury. So I don't know, like is that sustainable? Are the Mavs a top 4 West team?
Well, I think this probably segues into the next bit about slow starts, disappointments, etc. I think there's a lot of teams that can't hit the panic button as early. I think obviously the headline saying that Chicago has already had a player meeting, after the first game, maybe a little bit premature, because I think there's a lot of teams right now that, they might be looking at themselves saying, oh, we need to figure this out. One that comes to mind is Milwaukee. Clearly, Dame needs more time to acclimate into Milwaukee, and there's a new coach, which is another variable that I think people aren't talking about as well. I don't know if you saw that headline saying that Adrian Griffin was convinced to let Brook Lopez play closer to the basket. So, they're clearly teething some things. Miami, I don't know what point of the season we'll look at their record and then say maybe they should actually try in the regular season, but we just always naturally assume that they'll be fine, they'll figure it out. Um, Currently your Orlando Magic are having a bit of a surging start, and is that sustainable for a young team? I would hope so, but who knows? We've got as someone who follows Tyrese on fantasy, Tyrese is a bit hit and miss in terms of games played. He seems to take a game off at least once a week, and I don't know if that's a sustainable thing or not. Raptors look competitive despite the fact that team, just keeps being gutted and they don't seem to go in any direction. New York, not having the start that they probably would have hoped. The only team that really seems like we predicted is the Wizards. At least in the East, the Wizards are bad, and we knew that. And anyone who thought otherwise, I remember there was one comment. We don't get many comments on our videos, but there was one dude that was telling me that the Wizards were going to be all right, or I was underselling the Wizards. And if that person would like to re-comment on this video and tell me how they're feeling currently, that would be amazing. But we go to the West, and sorry to hog the whole channel here, but the Warriors are 5-2 with the CP experiment going, and that's curious. And Clay's been up and down. Pelicans, Zion is super healthy, and Brandon Ingram is super injured again, so that's always fun. Are the Timberwolves figuring it out? With the Twin Towers thing, because Cat did only play 29 games last season. Spurs, are they going to be competitive? They're 500 right now, but are they got 2 wins over Phoenix, but maybe that's just a matchup issue for Phoenix. Clippers currently sitting around 3-2. OKC now are at Shea, so that kind of throws a spanner in their works, and Josh Giddey having a bit of a down year. Trailblazers, does Scoop Henderson even play basketball? I don't even know at this pace. DeAndre Ayton looks like the best center of all time. It's a wild start to the season. And I don't know what I think the question that I would come out of this is, at what point do we look at these teams and then say, okay, you're clearly in playoff contention, you're clearly in trouble? Like, is it the 10-game mark, 15, 20? When do we think this is going to settle? Because currently the dust is everywhere.
I don't think if I was a GM, you would make any significant personnel roster changes until say like game 30. And I know a lot of teams do react very quickly if they come out of the gates extremely slowly. And I'm not saying that you're 0 and 30. Yeah, I'm saying that maybe you're like 13 and 17 and you're below expectations at game 30. Okay, well, let's look at the roster and let's look at what options we have available to us at that point. Okay, but obviously, look, so I look again, like you sort of said, it is early days. Orlando's up there. There's other teams that are up there that, like I said, the Mavs as well. Pelicans are up there again. They if Zion stays healthy, they could probably stay up there. That's a huge if, right? So, T Wolves at the moment are currently 3-2. Will they continue to sort of be able to stay in that top 4, top 6 in the West? So there's so many questions, right? Even like the Spurs, are they actually a legitimate sort of play-in 6th seed potential team? Wembanyama has clearly settled in probably quicker than many people thought. So credit to him. Credit to Spurs having him ready, and yeah, he's already effectively winning games for them. That's the key, right? A lot of rookies, like you alluded to, Scoot Henderson, he's not ready yet. It really appears he's not ready yet to impact games to a point of winning them by his own sort of ability. So, and that's where Wembanyama is clearly different. So, yeah, look, it's interesting how it's still early days for team standings there, and it's also early days here. But something that I guess I sort of wanted to sort of talk about is like, did the FIBA World Cup affect a few of these young players and their
Hmm.
real slow starts too? Because obviously I picked up a few of these guys in fantasy, and I've dropped a few of them now too. You talked about Giddy. Giddy obviously played a big role for Australia at the World Cup, and he's having a bit of a down year at the moment for his standards. Part of that reality perhaps is that Chet Holmgren's healthy now and taking a bunch of the offense away from Giddy and so on and so forth. Some of these other players like Jalen Williams, is looking for a bigger role within the team. SGA is going to be just the dominant force that he is. Lou Dort obviously demands X amount of minutes and touches, blah, so on and so forth. And Giddy feels like maybe the odd man out there, but his stats are down across the board. He still can't shoot. It's been disappointing. But some other names here, Walker Kessler. Yeah, Walker Kessler obviously was, part of that team as well. His stats are down across the board, and he's obviously on the Jazz here, where we're really looking to build on his first season. Great rookie year, and build on that. But his percentages are down at the moment. His stats across the board are down. Hey, look, early days. Don't get me wrong, but it's been again a slow start. 7 games in for him right now. Paolo Banchero is another one here. I looked at his stats a couple of days ago, and he had a breakout game, or you could say a breakout day. I think he dropped 30 in a game or two ago. But before that, it was averaging like 13 points a game. It's up to 17 now. But again, his stats are down across the board in that sense as well. And yeah, look, it's interesting, and I guess Austin Reeves is probably the last one that sort of jumps to mind. Again, he was supposed to have a big part of this Lakers season right now, and shooting 39% at the moment, and it's I don't know, I guess like I said, probably all shake out at the end of the day, but did the extra workload over the break here sort of not really help these players? Continue to play at that high level because it's just not sustainable to do it for 12 months a year.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a workload issue. I actually think there's probably the psychological element of they saw, and then they went home. They did nothing, and you look at the whole history behind Team USA experience has really helped young players or really helped those guys take the next leap. Yeah, but maybe that only occurs when they win. Maybe that only occurs when they have success. And, the level of scrutiny that they were put under, the disappointment that was kind of surrounding all of that, maybe that's why they've come back and they've been a little lackluster. And then you look at every player individually, and you could start to get a little bit caught up in the fact that someone else on their team's taken their role. Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell was balling out at the start of the season. Brandon Ingram is watching Zion Williamson actually be available and take over that lead role again. And Paolo is watching, Franz, who won gold, have success and lead his team. So maybe psychologically, every player had something go on, like the only player that really, you look at Mikal Bridges, for example, and he's probably goes back to being the lead guy on Brooklyn. But then, that Brooklyn situation isn't the same Brooklyn situation it was mid-season. You're not catching people off guard anymore. And, and that's another thing that I was thinking about with Utah. Utah, I think, surprised people last season. I think they just caught people off guard. No one expected them to be good, and no one cared about them being good. And they were a lot more competitive. They kept their same personnel, and now they're basically at the bottom of the West. And I think expectations are huge. So, Dennis Schroeder and Franz Wagner, they both won, and they're both playing quite well. So maybe it is just correlated to success. You have success in the FIBA World Cup, then you have a good one going.
I don't know. I guess you want to talk about this other cup though that they can win, right? Are you getting excited about this NBA Cup?
Aren't you excited about the Commissioner's Cup? That is the in-season tournament that every so often there's a game that is a seeding game, and the only way that you know that is from the 2K courts that they've created with the bright colors. It's clearly the first try at this, and it's clearly going to be teased out as time goes on. I saw some graphics that were put up and the standings, and it's kind of weird to see, the 6-7 games into the season, but now it's one loss and one win for these teams, and that it's a little hard to follow. I think it's one of those situations. I often say this in my personal life, that sometimes you just need to have things happen, and then you'll have a better idea of what's going on. You can talk at the death, but I don't really understand. So let's just have it happen, and then I'll figure it out. But one of the fun things that came out of this was the first batch of 5 in-season tournament games, highly competitive, right? The point differential stuff matters. And I think that's a really important thing that I'll pull out of this. The win-loss record is a factor, but how much you win by is going to impact your next step and where you get seeded and how things operate. So there is an incentive not just to beat your opponent, But even on the losing side, there is an incentive to not get beaten by too much. And you might have noticed that specifically with the Dallas and Denver game, where Kyrie and Luka are still chucking up threes, even though that they were down by 15 by the end of the game. And they ended up cutting that margin to 8. But that's beneficial to them because they will be seeded better than someone else who loses by 9 points or more. So there's a couple of interesting things that the NBA is finding out through this. Obviously, currently it's just a monetary game, but Tyrese Halliburton was quoted saying, "What if it just got you a playoff seeding?" But then there's lots of potential, right? Winning this tournament, do you get the option to pick your opponent in the first round, and you're the only person that can do that? Do you get to bump the next seed if you're in the play-in, and then you go from there? There's lots of fun things that you can do with this. I think this is good for the league, but I don't think it'll be good and it'll be solid until it's like 5 years deep. But admittedly, after seeing what they did with the NBA All-Star game, where they've scratched the draft and they're going back to normal, maybe this will only last 5 years and then they'll scrap it because it hasn't panned out.
Yeah, what a bugger about that All-Star draft, right? Are we just going to do our own All-Star draft regardless anyway? Because that was sort of good fun, wasn't it? Now we're back to East and West traditional classic style All-Star game. Sort of lost all of that, a little bit of intrigue there, I guess, and drama perhaps. But yeah, look, it's the NBA Cup. I just brought it up. I was like, I don't even know where the standings were, but I found a tab. Portland are first in their group. What a no! Look at that. Yeah, they're killing it. Yeah, look, I I must say I also saw that they played their first round. I saw like something like Miles Turner was the first player that ever got a basket in the NBA Cup or NBA in-season tournament, I guess, which is obviously lucky for those two teams that played first, right? Because clearly, one of you guys will, make history, right? In that sense, because it's not like multiple teams tipped up at the same time. That would have been more dramatically. Who's going to score first? Yeah, out of six teams playing at the same time, or 8 teams playing at the same time, or something like that. But I guess then I read through all these little stats and articles on ESPN, like, oh, blah blah blah. I don't know. Honestly, I said blah 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 because I really didn't care, which is probably a little bit unlike me. But I was like, right now it hasn't probably moved my needle much. That like you sort of said, that there's a level of money attached here for them. It's all obviously built into the season. It just feels like another game. I saw the courts, cool. They stand out. I've seen the articles where some of the courts are making people blind. Yeah. But it's I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really enthused yet about the in-season tournament. Maybe if that extra game comes to the finals, I'll be like, oh, sure, I'll tune into it. But I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on here. It's supposed to get us fans more excited, but it's working reverse for me.
I think I think it's a classic case, as I alluded to before. You just don't know what it is. So I think we need to see it run its course, and then we'll have a better idea. Those courts, like, it took me a half a second delay, but yeah, you look, those courts are helpful in the sense that, like, when you see that court in the future, you're going to be like, oh, this is a mid-season tournament game because, like, there's no other reason for them to be having such an obnoxious thing. But it instantly just made me think that, like, if you've ever played 2K online, those are the courts that you basically report the player or just quit the match because it's just too hard to figure out how to play. So, yeah, and those city jerseys. Look, I'd be really excited. I think I'll be excited for next year's one because I think next year they're going to figure out something interesting going on there. They're going to tease it out. This is just the
I,
first. I'm glad that the league does stuff.
I'm sure that they'll continue to tweak it like you sort of said, and I'm sure I'm going to get a little bit more enthusiastic about this as it rolls along. But yeah, look, I don't know. I think there's not much for me to sort of say about this in-season tournament, as opposed to this current fantasy season that is now underway, man. Like, I messaged you early today. You're like, dude, what's your problem, man? and yeah, let me put it on a recording. It's not a problem I have. It's currently I have an adjustment to make because I've played fantasy for many years, and it's like an NBA season, right? I sort of talk about that, right? You can make different choices. To me, NBA fantasy is similar to an NBA season because you can make choices, lineups, who you want to go with, so on and so forth. Yes, there's rules and stuff like that that you have to follow to do so, but I guess the current custom league that we're in has some interesting rules. And I guess what I'm feeling is that I'm actually not playing NBA fantasy anymore. I'm playing something new. I don't know. Let's call it NBA pickleball. Let's call it NBA in-season fantasy league here, because these rules are very different to what I've played for many years now. I'm trying to, oh, hey, I'll drop this player. Who's my weakest player? I'll drop him. I'm going to bring my injury replacement back. Oh, hold on, I can't do that. I can only do that if it's the same position. And that's something I guess I talked about today with you. So, but hey, look, man, I guess I'm off to a slow start. Hey, but, maybe I watched too much FIBA World Cup. But hey, man, you're a bit happier right now, right? After week two.
Yeah, well, look, we played each other in week one, and we actually had a three-way tie, and then I think a stat was adjusted, and I was able to get the win. And then the second week, I've had a lot more success. But look, I'd be amiss not to point out a couple of things. We had a nice little group chat going on, and you've dropped it, and it seems like you're trying to dodge some heat because you've been very vocal about everything wrong with the league. But I feel like there's a big sentiment currently that you just need to get good because you're pretty much losing constantly in every category. So, what do you have to say?
Like I said, I just gotta, not freak out. I gotta get to game 30, right? We're up to 18. We're up to game 18, man. All right, I told you game 30 was to make some decision stages. And, I said to you, some of my players have had slow starts. Dame obviously has huge adjustments to make in the Bucks. He's been hot and cold every second night in that sort of sense. Kyrie now is back, and hopefully he'll start balling like you sort of expect him to play. Siakam's probably a real shocking one. Like he's really, at the moment, it's like, whoa, what happened to Siakam over the off season right now? But again, you sort of have some level of confidence that his game is not going to fall off a cliff. Yeah, he's really again that slow start sort of category. You might have noticed I dropped Giddy, man. Anyone wants him, go grab him. you know, it's like I had to make a choice there due to the point guard restrictions, right? And obviously Kyrie over Giddy. That was basically the choice that I had to make here. It was like Kyrie over Giddy, and obviously I decided to hold on to Schroeder. Schroeder obviously is starting guard at the Raptors right now, and yeah, I think he's going to continue to get minutes. He's going to get a chance to put up fantasy stats and so on and so forth. And I think that's the part where again talking about our league specifically, I was like I would have liked to drop Marcus Smart, but Marcus Smart somehow, and I don't think he's a shooting guard, is listed primarily as a shooting guard slash point guard. All right, sure. So I don't know, but I guess if that's the case, that's the case. So, but hey, look, man, catch me next week. All right, we hit game 30. If I ain't, at least maybe picked up a win in the third week, then I don't know, man. It's time to go make some blockbuster trades. I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm curious. You offered me an interesting trade the other day. I had no interest in it, but it was Tyrese Halliburton for Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. Can you talk me through why you'd give up Anthony Davis, who I think is the league block getter, and Kyrie Irving, who you value more than Josh Giddey? What was the logic there?
Well, you turned it down, right? You turned it
I
down.
did.
I feel like there's a little bit of, maybe I should have started it for 24 more hours before I hit the decline button, right? I don't know. Look, dude, look, I don't know about you, man. I guess when I think something I've commented, you could say I've complained about is some of the stats that that I'm now observing in our league, right? I obviously shared that. Oh, hold on, doesn't matter if my guy makes 9 threes in a game. That actually doesn't matter. It's just what percentage does he make those 9 threes at? So, like I said, 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 1. A guy that shoots 1 out of 1 is at 100%. That's actually really good versus a guy that like Clay Thompson, which I also dropped, that can light up on any single night and make 5, 6, 7, 8 threes. But that doesn't even matter in this league. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to make some changes here, which then comes back to why did I offer that trade? I guess look, end of the day, I've sort of had to think about what are the stats that I want to focus on based upon positions of those players. And I think that's whether that's going to work or not, I don't know. And to a certain extent, I'm like, well, I don't know because I've actually never played this sort of fantasy league before. That's what I'm trying to say. I've never played this sort of fantasy league before. So I guess my strategy now is not something that I've done before. I think I mentioned to you I'm in another one. I joined this random one, which I often do each year, and I'm 2-0 there. I'm doing okay. There's other contenders obviously that are also 2-0, and they're going to be. We'll see how we shake up when we play them. When I play them in those weeks. But look, I'm feeling like, hey, that's what I'm used to, and because I follow the same strategy. Because it's not crazy, right? It's actually like just basketball, right? You're trying to follow the same strategy each season. If you're already successful at what you do, you just try and follow the same strategy. Yes, you're going to obviously draft different players, but there's some level of strategy that you follow that's still consistent. But I guess I've gone back to the drawing board. I'm like, oh, well, I can't follow that strategy because I can't even, drop and pick up that sort of players in that sort of sense.
Well, I think you need to, like, obviously, in the formation of this league, you had the opportunity to have some input, but you also have to understand that we are dealing with, entry level fans here who are actually using this as a way to engage with the NBA, which should be encouraged. And I think your obsession with the 3 point percentage thing, to say that it didn't go down popular would be an understatement. And you've hastily left the group chat afterwards. I don't know how you're going to be able to hide that evidence.
Look,
You
hey, look,
seem like you
I'll say it right now in the recording. I'm gonna either win or lose in silence. Hey, so that's okay. I'm
All
all
right.
right with that. I'm all right with that, man. But
Um, in terms of talking about the league specifically,
hey, actually, I don't want you,
oh,
actually, I want you to come back to that one. Why did you turn down the trade?
so I had this conversation with someone else in the league. 2-for-1 trades in this league are a poison pill because I would have to drop someone else for that to facilitate. So that means that you're essentially sneaking a 2-for-2 trade. And obviously, yes, I get to pick the second piece going out, but I, especially at this stage in the season, there's not really much motivation to trade. I'm looking at James Harden returning and me having two of the top three assist guys in the league. So I've clearly got some assets. Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving both are less likely to play than Tyrese Halliburton was. And it's a long season. It's a long season. And maybe you tried to get me on a knee jerk, but I'm sorry. One of us has to act like the expert in this standings. So that's going to be my job on this one, it seems. In terms of in terms of some things that I want to flex, because currently I'm sitting top of the leaderboard, and there's a couple of things that really need to be highlighted because I think this is going to be underrated. My players aren't playing very much, and I'm still winning. And it's not winning in the statistical categories, it's winning in everything else as well. I'm playing on average 200 less minutes than my opponent is across all of my players, and I'm still pretty much competitive in every category. So I'm pretty much top three in every category. My shooting percentage, I'm the only one shooting 50%. I've got the best 3 point percentage. And the best part for me is I've had regular players injured. I've had Devin Booker pretty much not be present for the whole season. James Harden's just returning, and now Devin Vassell, who I picked up, has went out with a groin injury. So I'm feeling really good based off where my team is. The fact that I'm not at full potential just yet. I'm not at full firing power. So I'm really curious to see how this season progresses. For you, I really dissected you. I was like, how do you go from being so confident and such an expert to being bottom of the league? And I think you've made some bad calls. You're trying to say that you're adjusting to the league, but you picked up Pascal Siakam and you lost Franz Wagner, and that currently has not been a good trade. And you dropped Desmond Bain to pick up Kyrie Irving, and ironically, also another loss in those categories. And yes, it might be specific to this fantasy thing, but you were actually poised to have a better season based off how you drafted. And I think you tried to outsmart everyone, or you tried to be more cerebral with it, and it's kind of bit you in the butt on that one. So
whoa, this is a lot of analysis for our freaking 2 weeks in a fantasy league that has 6 players in it, and hell, we've got like 10 all stars on every team, right? Hey, look, man. Look, I'll take it right now. I'll take it right now. All right, I currently suck. I'm last. Things can only go upwards from here, right? So that's cool. That's cool. Look, I think, like I said, man, I'm not necessarily freaking out. I think there's, like I said, some of my players definitely need to perform a little bit closer to what their expectations are. and I'll just continue to tweak the fringes here a little bit, and we'll see, man. You guys are up. I don't know what 6 wins, like because we're only in week 2. That's the point, right? I'm not really that I'm not clearly not in panic mode right now. I think I actually just brought up the standings here, and I was clicking through some of the stats, and um, it's funny because I think the last 2 weeks, obviously we were very close, and this week I
Mm.
lost like 2-7 or something. I'm getting killed in percentages. Yeah. I'm getting killed in percentage. I don't think I've won a single percentage category in 2 weeks. So that's 6 spots that I haven't even picked up 1 out of 6 or something like that. Yeah. But here's the funny thing here. As I was looking through the stats here, the two guys that have beat me both weeks are ones that are higher on me in percentage. I'm third in the league on some of these percentages. So my percentages are not that bad. I've drawn some interesting matchups that clearly you guys have outshot me, and that happens. I think that's the reality too. So don't know. I guess look, man. I guess let's see how this banter goes. Over the next few weeks. Maybe your ego continues to get bigger and bigger, and hey, look, that's fine. That's all good, or maybe suddenly everything just continues to become very very close, which is actually probably quite likely. I think considering we only got
Mm.
6 teams, it's probably going to be fairly close. But hey, look, we'll see what happens.
We already got a lot of ties. We've got a lot of ties across the league. And for you and I to tie in 3 different categories in that one week, I could make a case and say I did forget to do some subs at the beginning of the season because, as a full-time worker, I just wasn't as attuned to it as you were. But a lot of what ifs, a lot of what ifs in this league. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun going forward.
All right, we'll talk next week.
Easy.
Let me hit the button.